Hello and welcome to The Price of Music, brought to you by Music Ally. It's the show that both looks at the finances of the music industry, but also the behind-the-scenes workings of the music biz. I'm Steve Lemack, he's Stuart Dredge. This week, a slightly different show once again, as we bring you the second in our series this year of interviews with people who work in the music industry in some form or other. We spoke last month to Ricky Bates from The Joiners, the venue in Southampton. This month, here's a chance to hear an interview which I did at the Music Ally conference the other week, talking to Niamh Byrne, who is from 11 Management, well, it's key, one of the founders of 11 Management, who look after Gorillaz and various other artists. We wanted it, though, to try and get to the roots of what are the challenges that face managers, both established managers like Niamh and new managers coming into the business. What are the challenges? What are the big things coming down the road that people, experienced managers, are looking at thinking, well, this could be good or this could be a problem? It's basically an overview of music management in 2026, which is coming up. Stuart, you were in the crowd, in the audience for this, without spoiling the plot too much. Things that drew you in.
Yeah, I think she was just talking about how the role of a manager is changing and that some of the things they're doing that labels used to do, and some of the just in the idea of like, can you do without a label if you're a manager and you're doing all these different things for your artist? And then she was talking about sort of how managers are being paid and whether that should change, and that was interesting to me because I don't know a lot about how that works. But she was saying, I think, talking about that, about what changes could be made to get managers to be properly rewarded for what they do for artists. And she talked about AI because you have to, a modern day conference, and it was good. I think people in the room afterwards, they really enjoyed that session because I think it was just someone with nothing to sell. No, she wasn't, no reason to brag. She was just talking about this is how things are for us and these are the issues I see. So I think it was a really good interview. I think people were going to really enjoy it.
Thank you very much for coming. This is, something of a rare opportunity, to get an insight into the musical landscape from someone who has been involved in the industry for 3 decades now, much of that in music management, working with artists like Blur and Elastica and Mary Chain, Turin Brakes, before in 2011 co-founding 11 Management, which is a really forward-thinking, creative, multitasking management company, which obviously has had huge success with the likes of Gorillaz and Damon Albarn. She's also currently chair of the MMF, spotlighting the challenging role that today's managers face in our ever-changing music world. Another round of applause, please, for Niamh Byrne.
Nice to meet you.
Right, we haven't got long. 23 minutes, 46 seconds, it says there. But having said that, we should, for context, explain how you got into the music industry in the first place and what drew you to music management and then drew you back to music management.
Okay, so I'm going to have to go back to set the tone here. I'm from Dublin and from a kind of suburb in the north of the city. I grew up in the 70s, 80s. It was kind of an interesting time. Mass unemployment, and we had the backdrop of the Troubles. So actually, as a kid, kind of growing up in Dublin, it wasn't kind of full of a huge prospect. So as a kid, we used to kind of go to, you might know this street. We used to go to Grafton Street, and that was kind of our kind of solace. That was kind of where if you're coming from the north of the city to Grafton Street, it was a bit like going to Barbados. It was very colourful. And for those of you kind of know that street, back then it was kind of full of kind of live performance. It was like a series of kind of live shows that kind of went from one end of the street to the other. So I think for me as a kid, that was my first introduction to live music, because you didn't have money to kind of do anything else, and it was amazing. There were skiffle bands, there was singer-songwriters, very different to what it is now, but it was a pretty amazing place. And then obviously as a child kind of frequenting that place, I started to kind of look at kind of punks. And I remember kind of being incredibly inspired by kind of punks who inhabited kind of one end of the street. And I just saw kind of a spark there, you know? It was like a bunch of people who were like just doing whatever the hell they wanted, you know, in a country that had a lot of like issues. And it was just probably my first introduction to counterculture, you know, seeing a group of people kind of doing and pushing against convention. And I kind of thought, you know what, I really like that. And so that was kind of my introduction. And then I started to, obviously, because Dublin is full of musicians, they became my friends. And then I kind of ended up kind of, you know, being in a kind of world where I never wanted to be a musician, but I certainly kind of wanted to facilitate that kind of expression. You know, it's such an amazing thing to be able to do. And I think people who are kind of inhabit that space obviously need support. And so I kind of always kind of had this vision that I would be a manager. So I didn't know any management. And so anyway, roll on a kind of few words. I followed my sister to London. She was also in music. In fact, she worked at The Word way back then. So that was my introduction to music in London. And she finally, she said to me, I found this kind of job in a newspaper for a music manager in The Guardian. And I applied and I got it. And that is genuinely my start in music. I didn't know anyone. I just knew it was what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to be around creative people. And that was kind of my kind of kickstart into management.
Were you a good fit right from the very start in terms of, you know, the things that you need to be a good
it's an interesting
manager?
question.
I mean, I guess it's quite a learning curve if you haven't been a manager and then you're working for a management company.
It's a really interesting question because I would have thought that I would just landed there. You know, I answered an advert and I landed in that place and became a manager. But I actually think, you know, my background, you know, the fact that I was actually working or around musicians and kind of actually I worked in Tower Records actually very early on. I had a lot of experience kind of being around kind of music and art. That I feel that was definitely useful. You know, I kind of spoke the language. You know, it's a different language.
But in terms of, I always wonder whether you have to be of a certain temperament or have a certain skill set to be a good manager, which, I mean, these days it's probably versatility, and what has been a common theme throughout the life of managers is patience.
Yeah, I agree. I think that is important. And I think people kind of misunderstand artists when they're kind of maybe can appear demonstrative, you know, but that to me is only a sign of somebody who knows what they want. And somebody who knows what they want is actually a really, really good thing. And so, yeah, I think artistry can be very misunderstood. And I think it is really, really important to kind of understand, you know, most musicians are, you know, vessels for expression, you know, and that means sometimes there are no filters, you know, and we may be able to kind of manage that, but you know, artists is about expressing, and so you need to be patient. Yeah.
And the relationships that you build, I suppose the one thing you're always looking for is to be able to look them in the eye and just say, "Trust me."
Oh yeah, I mean, there's definitely I think there's two things that management require. One is absolutely trust. You need to know that your manager has your back. If you're going to go down a hole and kind of into a creative process, writing a record, you need to be able to come back out of your hole and know that somebody's got you, you know, things are taken care of, and that you're working to the same level, you're matching the same level of work that they're doing. I think as long as you do that, I think you'll succeed. And vision, I guess, is another thing, an attribute, I think, of any management. I think, again, when somebody's tunneling and they're going down into that kind of process, you need to basically have the vision of where it's going to go, and you need to know that destination so that when they're ready, you can take them there. That's the trick.
So there are some things which are constant. What has changed, though? Because there must have been so many changes. Working in music management in the 90s and working in music management now, what has changed for the better, and has anything changed for the worse?
Yeah, that's a long question. I had the most amazing kind of learning. You know, I learned the craft of management by working with some incredible people who were kind of working at Parlophone Records at the time. It was an amazing, amazing label that had amazing, amazing people. And that was an amazing thing. And I think kind of what's happened over the years is that we've lost a lot of those kind of really amazing people and maybe kind of replaced with kind of younger people, which is no bad thing, by the way. But I think there's still kind of, a lot of experience that has kind of maybe been drained from the industry that would have been better if there was kind of more balance. But yeah, it's massively changed. I used to go into a label years ago and you would kind of go in and you would kind of be the manager, do the deal making. Everybody else would basically facilitate the work, and there was an amazing kind of level of service. But that's kind of chipped away, and I think the kind of management role has now shouldering a hell of a lot more than it did before, and it's now us that are doing the kind of lion's share of the work. That's not a diss to kind of labels. There are still amazing things out there, but that's just the reality that it is now. I think it's just a different landscape, and management's a different shape.
So if there's two questions out of that, I suppose. One is what you don't have then, if you're picking up other roles that people were doing at the record company, two things. How do you find the time to be the manager that you were and do all the additional work? And two, why are you signing to a label if they're not doing the work?
Yeah, I mean, this is a difficult question because management, it's twofold. I think, let's go up to the label question first. I think funding is a huge issue for management. And I think today managers could probably do everything. I mean, it's even possible to supply your whole entire supply chain. But unfortunately, kind of funding is really difficult. So I think certainly kind of people are still reliant on kind of traditional kind of funding models. And if you're not getting value from the people that you are kind of doing those deals with, you're going to get frustrated. Because it's not kind of matching the level of kind of work that you're kind of putting in. But unfortunately, at this moment in time, there's very little of anything else. So it's a difficult thing.
So how much when you're talking about doing things yourself, because this is something I think you've been doing with Gorillaz, where basically you've taken on doing pretty much everything, being your own. Or virtually being your own record label as well as management company.
Yeah, I think that's kind of probably true for a lot of managers these days. It's largely unseen. I think the work of a manager is largely unseen. I think we as a management company, we are now 30 years later, I think my whole life has kind of been trying to get to this point that we're now kind of self-releasing the next kind of Gorillaz record ourselves. Our team do everything from kind of marketing campaigns to digital strategy to data management to fan management to production. I think at any one point in any Gorillaz campaign, we probably have about 3 or 4 producers producing the kind of huge amount of artwork and kind of animation that we do for any large campaign. But it's only a team of 14 people, and we're doing a worldwide campaign. So it's a lot of work.
Yeah. Well, do you think then that if we are continuing to use, say, the old model of finance, would it almost be better if the record label gave the management company the money?
Well, I would say yes. And not because I don't think that there isn't a role for labels. I just think that managers are best positioned to do that work well, and because we don't have kind of big, huge rosters to have to kind of contend with. We've got smaller rosters, and we can basically make budgets go much longer. We're much more efficient with the money that we get. There's no wastage. We have to succeed. There's no question around that. Like, that's what you need to do. You need to sustain your artist's career. You need to succeed. So you do kind of put a lot of time and effort. I mean, we spend a lot of time looking at the thing that we posted last week and what effect that post had. We go into minutiae detail and then we basically change kind of how we respond to things based on that information. I don't think that if you were going to any label, good or bad, they would be able to do what we do. So yeah, I feel very passionate about what value managers add. And I think that kind of extends also to catalogue. I think it's one thing to acquire catalogue, fantastic. it's another thing to add value. And I think managers add massive value to catalogue, and that's worth a lot.
I mean, when you get to a certain level, when you have a team and a reputation, and you can do that sort of work, what I worry about is for younger managers now. One, they're being asked to do much more. They've got to be more versatile. They've got to have more skills across the board. But at the same time, we're in a landscape where it often takes longer for artists to break. So it's hard for young managers to keep their heads above water and do a good job.
Yeah, I mean, that's my massive frustration, is the normalization of kind of what managers have to do now. Managers still get paid on the premise that they're deal makers, 20%. That's what they used to do. They made deals and they didn't do anything else. Now managers do everything. I mean, we had a conversation this morning where you were talking about a manager that was basically the agent and the publicist and everything. And that's true for a lot of managers, but yet that isn't seen or heard, and it's certainly kind of not valued in the same way. So I do worry massively that there's a normalization of kind of what managers are expected to do for the money that they receive. And as you say, time as well. And we talked about time too, because we don't seem to have any time in our days. I remember being able to go for lunch, and it was, you could go for lunch. I can't go for lunch anymore, guys. And I think that's all kind of, important, because if you don't have space, you don't have time to think, you can't be creative, you can't push yourself, you can't, think beyond kind of what you just have to do. And that's then true for artists who are also doing the same thing. So, yeah, I think it's not all doom and gloom, guys, but it's there's definitely opportunity. But yeah, managers are doing a lot more than they used to.
I mean, it's not doom and gloom. I think it's just. Do you think it's time for a reevaluation of what managers do in both ways, really, just in terms of appreciating the work of a manager, but also maybe trying to find different ways of paying the manager so that you actually value them.
I mean, for those of you who don't know, obviously chair of the MMF as well, and the MMF is an incredible organisation representing 1,000 managers, and every year first of all, Annabella, who I've probably in the room somewhere, is basically acts on the mandate of its members. So the MMF are doing what the managers kind of want them to do. And so every year there's like this study or kind of focus on what people want to actually kind of do. And the resounding kind of information coming back from people was value of managers and kind of new remuneration models. And so we have actually kind of started to produce work that kind of show how you could potentially do things differently, how things could potentially work. But I think it's still a little bit of a debunking that we kind of need to do, that kind of managers are not necessarily skilled or not necessarily kind of the same level as what you would do if you did something else. So there's an education to be done, and I think we're working to change that. But yeah, it needs to get better.
Yeah, I think there was a report, wasn't there, that said managers are worth £714 million to the wider UK music industry. And if you're worth that sort of money, then creating that sort of money, then surely something should be coming back. Maybe we have forgotten that there are really good managers behind the scenes, big artists, and there's up-and-coming managers who work for 3 years just to get an indie record deal.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think there's another figure as well, that for every pound that is that an artist kind of spends on a manager, they get £8 back. I think I might need to be corrected on that. Is it £8? Thank you. So yeah, huge value that kind of both artists and industry kind of get from their managers, and I do think that it's important to invest in them actually, because I think they're shouldering a lot of work, and I think they can give a lot back.
Ladies and gentlemen, Niamh Byrne.
Thank you.
Thank you.